Appreciate everyone for turning out. It's a bit warmer than I thought in So welcome to the GPSA State Election Forum here in the city of Narungga. I'm just going to start off with a few housekeeping. No doubt there are locals and fans of the Maitland Hall before, so toilets are that way. If anyone needs to use, we've got some waters up the back as well, and emergency exits are also in a very similar spot to where you came in. So a few housekeeping rules to start off with. I'll just introduce our candidates as well. Actually, I'll get them to introduce themselves in a minute, but what we'll do to start with is get the chair of GPSA, Narungga, to say a few words.
Thanks, Brad, and it's great to be here with you today, here over on the YP. Actually been a really big week for Grand Producers South Australia. As you know, we are the Executive Group, representative group for 4,500 Grand Producers in South Australia. And just this week, months ago, we had our annual South Australian Grand Industry Awards. In Adelaide, where we had 230 growers at Adelaide Oval, celebrating this industry and celebrating what it actually means to be a grain producer here and what we actually offer to the state as well, which is pretty fantastic. And in fact, a couple of the major award winners at the Grain Industry Awards are from this part of the world, being Ben 16 from Maitland, who was named the Grain of the Year, and also Mark Shelley, who's operating Canadian, who was the Innovation Partner of the Year. There are also some other finalists as well, which is fantastic. We also had a big announcement this week as well with a drought loan that we've been working on with the state government for some time for those that are most affected with drought across South Australia, and to give them some, a chance to work into a new season this year. So we're pretty pleased about that. But now we turn our focus to the election, which is coming up, obviously, next month. And we as GPSA feel it's really important for people in the regions across South Australia to have the opportunity to have a voice, and have an opportunity to hear from their candidates and ask some questions, especially about things that are especially relevant to their local region. So thank you for coming out tonight. Thank you to the candidates, and thank you to you as well for being here tonight. And I'm going to hand you back to Brad, who's going to facilitate the discussion, and certainly feel free to jump in and contribute strongly to something that we think is going to be very effective. Thanks very much.
Thanks, John. I actually forgot to introduce myself, Brad Perry. I'm CEO of Grain GPSA, so I'm emceeing the night. Hopefully, you don't have to hear from me too often. Hopefully, the fans don't blow away my panties. We'll get straight into it. So, just a bit of a format for tonight. We'll get the candidates to give a short brief. We'll try and keep it to 5 minutes each. So, just introduce yourself, a little bit about your background, and we might get you to raise one major issue you think for the Narungga electorate, two in your opening. So, let's try and get those to 5 minutes. Then I'm going to throw a couple of grain-related questions at you. So, we'll get those, and then we'll open it up to the floor for questions. So, without further ado, we'll get you to start introducing yourself, starting with Paul.
Good evening, Mr. My name is John Bennett, representing Family First Party. I live in the Waterloo, and I spent a lot of time in the Northern Peninsula, where I live most of my life in Adelaide. My mother used to share the Barry and done a lot of caravan in the Northern Peninsula, all over the States.
No introduction, so give us one of your major issues for Narungga.
Family First was formed for the reason of looking after things which affect the family, obviously, and pretty much any legislative decision that's made will affect the family. So in this case, we have a primary producer in the area, or the farmers that work on farms. So the productivity, the well-being of the farms is something that's important to you and will obviously affect your family. It's also an agriculture area, and right now we're fighting the algal bloom, which is causing quite a problem. And a lot of stuff by that. Separate to that, Family First is particularly interested in social and family issues. We stand against radical gender ideology, harming a lot of young people. We stand against abortion, euthanasia, and some similar issues. I think that will be the start. It's probably several more later.
That's good. Chantal?
Thank you everyone for coming out, and thank you for having me tonight. So I'm representing One Nation, Narungga. A few things I'm passionate about is our fishing, the algae bloom, and how it's affected certain areas, not every area. And I feel like in the York Peninsula, some of these businesses, community, the people, we're suffering and we're paying the price. So I'm really big on fighting for the community in regards to fishing. I don't know if you've seen my posters around. I am fighting to bring back snapper fishing in certain zones as well. So I'll tell you a little bit about One Nation and what we're fighting for. On behalf of One Nation, I would like to thank the hard-working farmers here tonight and the Grain Producers SA for the invitation. One Nation stands with our farmers as they fight the undeclared war being waged on their sector by Labor and the Greens. One Nation supports the right to farm. The current state governments have made it harder for our primary producers to do what they do best, grow some of the highest quality food and fibre in the world. One Nation will remove the excessive red tape. The laws for environmental reform is an overreach, and this whole renewable energy is out of control, and it's not helping anyone right now. Farmers are battling with decaying regional roads, record high energy, fuel costs, energy shortages and blackouts, plus the destruction of the prime agricultural land to install wind and solar farms, as we all know. Farmers also deserve much better drought relief and more funding. These issues and more constitute Labor Green attacks on our farmers, which directly threaten primary production and regional communities in South Australia. One Nation will put farmers first. I say that our farmers get on with the job and do what they do best and stop adding idiotic reforms and more red tape. More information on our agriculture policies is available on our SA One Nation website. And inform yourself and others that you do know on how One Nation prioritises farmers and what exactly they need from the government and not what they want to do. We stand with our farmers always. No foreign ownership, cheaper power, better water access, ensuring property rights. We will fight for you within the York Peninsula and Australia-wide if elected. Thank you for listening to me, and please make sure you vote for me in the state election. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Tanya.
Thanks, Brad. Most people probably know me, but I'll just give a brief introduction. So thanks for everyone for coming along this evening. With my husband Jeff, I've worked on our family farm for 22 years while raising our two sons. And during that time, I've developed strong skills in agriculture and small business and deepened my understanding of regional opportunities and challenges. Professionally, I've worked at Westpac in finance and human resources and later led the work in health and safety and policy development at the Maitland Town Hall. I've proudly served the York Peninsula community over the last 12 years on council, including 4 years as deputy mayor, delivering strong infrastructure, backing small businesses and improving local services. I represent several progress associations and serve on various bodies, including the York Peninsula Health Advisory Council where I advocate for better rural health care. Beyond the titles and roles, what matters most is this. I've always been here to serve my community, and my record is one of being present, consistent and committed. That passion to serve my community is what inspires me every single day. Regional families should never be disadvantaged because they live outside of our home. We deserve equal access to health, education and opportunity. I'll advocate for better access to GPs and specialists, stronger hospitals, standard radiology services and aged care. That's why the Liberal team is focused on practical fixes, strengthening regional health and mental health, and rebuilding the workforce. Scrapping Labor's GP payroll tax will protect country practices from high cost, support bulk billing, and help improve and retain doctors in Narungga. Farmers, fishers, and small businesses are the backbone of our community, and they need practical policies to stay competitive. I support measures to address the skills shortage and accelerated three-year apprenticeships, strengthen literacy and numeracy in schools, and invest in teachers to prepare our young people for the workforce. Housing affordability is critical. I back scrapping stamp duty for first-time buyers on existing homes up to $1 million, giving young people and families in our region a fair chance to own their own home. Narungga is not getting its fair share of infrastructure, safe roads, which are incredibly important to our agricultural sector, childcare, community facilities, reliable and affordable energy for households and businesses, and I certainly support securing the Torrens Island gas plant with base load power while keeping our debt under control and focusing on the investment in our regions. Ultimately, we need to get back to important things in this state, like affordability for our households and businesses, better health care for patients and staff, and no matter where you live, a safer and stronger community that's also makes back our regions, and particularly primary production is the strength of our region. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Fraser.
Thanks, Brad. Thank you, everyone. My name's Fraser, and I've had the great pleasure of being the Member of Parliament for our wonderful region for the past 8 years. It's been a tremendous honour. I'm seeking to extend for another 4. From the outset, can I say to John Brad, thank you very much for hosting this event. Such an important part of the democratic process to have the ability to pose questions to those seeking public office and to hear their thoughts. So thanks for filling that gap and making sure we have that opportunity. I'm going to say sitting during my stand, just get a zoom in on that, that's all over my belt. But I'll stay sitting for the moment. I want to focus on things from an agricultural lens. We are a GPSA event, I want to make sure that we focus on that. And for me, during my term in this role, that started at the start when the mining bill came to the Parliament for debate. So you all remember, a lot of you were heavily involved in the debate. You all might remember that upon being elected, the Liberal government put forward a mining bill which I felt adversely impacted the miners or the farmers by electorate. Upon hearing that news, I took the action of crossing the floor and voting on behalf of the community that elected me rather than the party that pre-selected me, and that was something that I will remain proud of today. That was something that caused some personal satisfaction, I guess, some personal aims. It was something that inevitably was a good decision because they're the people that elect you the ones that you should represent, or whose vote you should cast on their behalf. Since that time, I reckon we've made some great strides. We, of course, got rid of, and it has been lost in the history a little bit, we got rid of the genetically modified crop moratorium. So farmers have continued to access far better technology that their interstate neighbours already access to. That was a wonderful initiative, removed some red tape, made the job of farmers that much easier. We have, I think, had some improvements in our road services. Mobile in the tunnel, there's still plenty to do. But I just rode here on Arthur and the Maitland Road and had a great time doing it. That was a brand new road that was really poor state of repair before in the last 8 years, and something we managed to fix. So there's a lot more to do. So agricultural things, I'd like to look forward to the biggest issue we're facing at the moment is this constant war on arable lands. Candidates have already touched on it, it's no secret. You don't have to look too far across the entire country to see a single bureaucrat coming up with an alternate use for arable lands in the country. We've got, again, other candidates have touched on it already, but we've got solar farms going up, wind turbines going up. In the mid-north state, there's a transmission line going up through valuable arable lands. At Rosebery, they're not going to file any new houses. You don't have to look at hard to find. City bureaucrat coming out and alternate use of farmland across this country. I think there needs to be greater protection for private members in parts of achieve that aim. That to me is the number one issue that agricultural community faces. Protecting that small percentage of our land, our state, reduce the crop so that we can use that for everyone. Thanks, I look forward to taking questions and we come up.
Thank you. Thanks everyone, and we'll get straight into it. So as I promised, I had a couple of grain-related questions to start with, and the first one we raised is a big one for our industry really in Peninsula. And Fraser did touch on them and some of the other candidates as well. Mining and agriculture. So the question for candidates, let's keep it short, because we're trying to get as many questions for the audience as we can tonight. Can mining and agriculture coexist? What are your views on that on the Peninsula and some of the events that have happened up here have caused tensions? How do you think that they can be fixed? We'll start with you, Rob.
John, sorry.
Yeah, I'm aware that there's been quite an issue over some years, particularly down quite way, of a large mine being planned in that area, and obviously that's going to take a lot of arable land, and frankly also for farmers. I don't believe that area should be mined. There are plenty of non-arable places that they can get a solution for their boards, whatever it is that they're looking for.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, what was the question again, sorry?
The question is around mining and agriculture. Do you think they can coexist, and what's your views on that?
It depends in a way, but in regards to mining and agriculture, I think the main priority is agriculture and our farmers and putting them first. So obviously the government puts red tape on a lot of things and they say, oh yeah, this is what's happening, and then they go and do a 180 and then obviously change it up. So what I'm standing for is our farmers, and I will be putting the farmers first.
Yes, well, just with regard to land access, that's quite a significant issue for farmers and the miners that are seeking to expand or look for other exploration areas. So just in the final weeks of Parliament last year, the opposition successfully changed a bill to cap extensions on the existing 18-year exploration licence to 2 years, whereas Labor wanted 5-year extensions with repeated indefinitely. So they also included a requirement for the minister to get an independent agricultural impact assessment done before awarding an extension, and another requirement for the minister to consult with the landowner if an extension is to be granted. So Labor had attempted to force this bill through Parliament, which would have seen farmers indefinitely unable to access their own land. So the Liberal Party is extremely strong in protecting our agricultural industry. We obviously respect the mining industry and the value that it brings to the state, but it needs to be a fair and equitable process for farmers to ensure that they have every opportunity to be consulted and continue their very important contribution to the economy of the state.
Thank you. Well, no, I think I've got a reasonably strong track record on it, and closing mining on farmland. As been touched on originally, it's pretty hard going to find support in Parliament. As Tony correctly says, lately there's been a bit of a small support for it. So if this movement continues, we are on the right track to find some support. And the model jurisdiction that we need to follow is Queensland. Queensland have what's called the Regional Planning Interest Act. The bureaucracy there has undertaken the work to identify strategic crop land, which is a higher arable value than others, make sure that those are up for the primary roads. In my view, that's the whole jurisdiction we should be following. We should be making sure agricultural land is.
Thank you all. The next question, and we have this raised a lot at GPSA by farmers. What specific commitments will you make to improve roads, infrastructure, and infrastructure-related road services in this electorate over the next term, if you're elected? So roads and infrastructure.
Yes, so this is an important point that I've experienced quite a bit. Some of the roads in this peninsula are in shocking state, and I definitely support the concept of improving them. They need an upgrade. The Copper Coast Highway is a good example. It's a highway in the neighbourhood, frankly, parts of it are a road track. And I think particularly around the time of, sorry, mine went blank. When the crops are reaped, we've got heavy trucks moving to the silos and they're getting a pretty rough ride. It's going to be damaging to their trucks. It's going to break up the road surface, which is not good for other people. So we definitely need better roads. I'm all for
that. Yeah, so in regards to roads, that's a massive one out this way. I don't think reducing this speed is going to make a difference. We need to put money into roads. Okay, so the current government, they're saying, oh, let's reduce the speed. What's that going to do? So obviously One Nation, we're going to give the funding to fix the roads. That's a big, big one. And then what was the other thing as well that you wanted to know about agriculture? How we're going to help that?
It was infrastructure, so roads and infrastructure.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so obviously One Nation, we're going to obviously pay the money, get the funding, and I also want to tell everyone here tonight, if I am elected, we will have power in the upper house, so I can get that funding approved. One Nation, we put all farmers first, so that's a big deal to us.
The State Liberal Party have committed $1 billion to fix the state's deteriorating road network. It will deliver a critical $300 million boost over current funding levels to tax Australia's $2.1 billion road maintenance backlog. And this commitment to regional rural roads is something we haven't seen in a long time. In fact, if we go back to 2018 to 2022, under the Marshall government, there was record investment in regional roads during that period, $3 billion to fix 4,500 kilometres of regional roads. So it's the Liberal Party who actually invest in regional roads, not the Labor Party. They don't look beyond Jeff's processes and the toll gate. Also in terms of federal funding, the federal Labor government have reduced their contribution that they make to the state. So it's been reduced to a 50-50 contribution under our Liberal government. The Morrison government is an 80-20 split between federal and state. And that makes a massive difference to our local councils, the pressure that they are under to come up with a 50-50 funding obligation. That's what we get on Labor, and that's why we have to move back to a Liberal government to bring the focus back to our regions if we want decent roads.
Well, I'll be flying out to swimming at 5 here, but actually we've made a decent start. We've got the whole way from here to Mills and resurfaced in the last 8 years. It's incredible effort. We've got O'Hara been completely redone just in the last year or so. And that's a major thoroughfare that's been in the full state of repair for a long time. So there's undoubtedly more to do. I think over the past 8 years we've managed to get a bit done. Hopefully, I'm confident I should say, if I can get it up again, we'll be able to continue that work. The other thing on roads and infrastructure is how we use them. We had a wonderful confirmation this week that the new Arthur O'Hara Road will be used for $30 million. So we've got a brand new road, and now we've got farmers that can actually use it properly, get their price before, and make their movements much more efficient. So moving new roads is one thing. We make sure that once they build and understand it, that we open up the proper infrastructure.
Thank you all. I've got plenty more questions, but I'm going to open it up to you guys in the audience. So we've got Brendan on the roving mic. What we'll do is, you raise your hand when you stand up to ask a question, we'll try and
James here, coming in with all the letters. Mallee, according to most people, is past the post. He's pretty ruthless. He's talking to Hammond today, said I'm putting 100 million into the Mount Gambier. He's going to declare 22 million for the hospital. There's no Labour person here. How will you, as candidates, on the try and get Mallee to even recognise us when he says there's no hope for him here? He's just cherry picking. He's going to pick up another 7 or 8 seats, and we are just virtually left to our own devices.
Good question. We'll start from this end, John, so we'll go down the line.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's no doubt that there's a lot more work that needs to be done in the area, and a lot of support doing that. The only way that Mallee is going to get a message is at the polls, and he needs to be voted out. Frankly, there's many things he's doing wrong, that's what's wrong.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. If I'm elected, I'm pretty much going to not take no for an answer. It's time we put your Peninsula first. I would like to say I kick his door down, because I don't take no for an answer. One Nation, pretty confident we're going to win a lot of seats this year. The polls are looking really good. So obviously if you elect me, just a very strong voice, and I don't take no for an answer. So Mallee is going to be getting out soon.
Thanks for the question. I think one of the reasons, and this is no disrespect to a current member, but the Labor government won't necessarily listen to an independent member because they're a single voice. They are not going to form government. They won't be able to uphold a ministry unless, of course, it's a hung parliament. So what we're seeing is a local member who's trying their hardest to advocate for this region, but the Labor Party will certainly not listen. And the investment promised to $22 million to a Clare hospital or Alameda Clare is an example of that. When we need a very similar investment at a Waterloo hospital, we have advocated for that strongly. The people in this region have shouted out, there's a petition of 1,000 signatures. The government had put forward recommendations from that proposal that went to government, but they have done nothing. And so this is why we need to have a Liberal representative in this electorate. We need to be part of a team that can hold this government to account and listen to what we're saying. So that would be my message to people, that we need a strength in the voice to bring money back to this region.
Well, you put a counter over. James, I tend to agree. Based on all the media I've read, providing these concerns to the Labor government will be real. My pitch to you, as well as would be now, we need to consider which candidate is most likely to be able to work with that government. The ultimate truth. You can change the ultimate truth is that only the government can disperse money. Can't originate money from nothing else. It needs to be the government that decides where money is actually apportioned. So we need to figure out who would be the most likely candidate to be able to work with that government. That leads to the next term. And my submission to you as voters would be that it's not the Liberal Party, because they're sworn enemies. And it's not One Nation, because last time they were behind the Liberal Party and they know less likely. So I'm pitching the independent is the best chance to work with what appears to be the Labor government. And hopefully we can have a bit more success than we've had done over the past 8 years.
Thank you. Good question. Over the next one.
I suppose going back a little bit what Fraser said there, so even if you do control the upper house, Chantel, Labor will control the lower house and everything will get blocked. And what Fraser just said, the money only comes when the Labor Party says we'll build a new hospital in Waterloo or we'll build a new hospital in Maitland. Like, I love the passion, but kicking down his door is not how Parliament works, unfortunately. And you'll be lucky to get a meeting with some Mallee, let alone get to see. So I think your passion is there, but I think, you know, we got to come up with, the question was what infrastructure will you try to bring to Narungga from a farming point of view? What's the original question? And I don't know if we address that. We spoke a lot about roads, but, you know, do we need, so do we need, how are we helping the farmers? That's what we're here tonight for. Farmers or infrastructure in Narungga. I don't know if you know how Parliament works, but it doesn't work when you kicking his door down, because you know, when Mr. Nelanauskas goes to Murray Ridge and gives them 100 million today, 20 million clear, that's exactly how it works.
Thank you. So we'll break that down into a question about infrastructure. So grain producers and farmers also need strong communities so they can do their work and live. So what is a key infrastructure ask that you would be seeking if elected? So infrastructure could be anything, could be housing, could be health, could be roads, could be manufacturing, could be anything. So a key infrastructure commitment that you think would be something that Narungga needs.
I think this one's a no-brainer. We've had some pretty bad electricity supply recently. It's affected a lot of people rather badly, especially in the heat wave that we've had. I'm aware that there's work going on to wash insulators to improve the infrastructure there. Some of the insulators are beyond washing, and this has been left too long. And there's a major upgrade needed to catch up to the backlog of work on that. I think that's probably one of the most important things we're facing.
Yeah, so I just want to touch base on, obviously, you were saying earlier about kicking the door down, that's a metaphor. So obviously I find this generation is very sensitive. I wouldn't actually go and kick this door down, that's just like, an example. Obviously I do have passion and I feel like that's what we need. I feel like no one's got that anymore, and as for One Nation, yes, we will have power to get funding. So don't say that we won't, because we will, and we're very confident we're going to win a lot of seats. So that's something you need to know. And obviously everyone does work side by side when it does come to Parliament. So don't judge straight up just because obviously you're judging from by its cover. And obviously in regards to infrastructure, a big one to me is the healthcare. Now I have been in talks about getting that funding, and that's something I will be able to guarantee if elected. So just know that. Thank you.
Thanks. So I think we've sort of highlighted that roads are a key resource for our primary producers, and I just want to make it clear, in the last 8 years, 4 years of government was Liberal government, the Marshall Liberal government, and that, I'll just reiterate that was when there was a record investment into regional roads under the Liberal government, $3 billion. So part of that money was the funding to fix the Maitland to Arlington Road. So that these positive impacts that we've seen in our region have been committed by Liberal, the Liberal Party, and delivered by Labor in this last term, but on the basis of the Liberal Party having committed that funding and committed to the projects. So it's not the Labor Party or necessarily an independent member that has delivered these projects. It's actually the Liberal Party from 2018 to 2022. Certainly, I think a Liberal opposition, if that's the position we're in, will have a much stronger voice to continue to deliver infrastructure to this region. Other than roads, I think health is a key issue, whether you're a farmer, another business person, a primary producer, whether it's fishers or small business person. Everyone needs good health care and access to GPs, specialists, mental health services. They're clearly lacking in this region, and so investment in our health system, strengthening our hospitals and other allied health is very important, and that's something that the Liberal Party would be pushing for.
Well, I tend to agree with Chantal. I think she asked me one entirety of the health system. That's what I think is the most help and most investment. And before I'll come off second rate, because I don't know if I consider it again, absolutely guarantee. But when I get the funding, but I do think it's trending in the right direction. Demonstrated knowledge of new concern. There's been some government acceptance of the recommendations that have been provided. I think it's moving in the right direction. I'm hopeful that we can continue to move. There's one constructive priority, I think it's
Thank you. Have we got any other questions from the audience?
My question's for Pat.
Sorry, what's your name?
Sorry, Daniel.
Name and where you're from.
Daniel, I'm Medina, with my nation. I just want to touch base, my question is for Tanya. Have you looked at the polls lately? Do you understand that One Nation is actually polling higher both state and federally than Liberal? And how do you promise these people money, as you may not be the true opposition party election time? One Nation may likely win more seats than you, both in the Senate and the lower house. So, put you in a place where you think, well, what if the Liberal Party doesn't become the opposition in the Senate?
I guess at the previous election in 2022, the polls were reasonably high for One Nation at that point as well. But come to polling day, it didn't work out that way for One Nation. The actual voting was far less. So I think we're 6 weeks out from an election. A week is a long time in politics. So we can look at the polls now, but they may be very different on come election day. And I think that a lot of promises might be put out there by One Nation. A lot of the platforms are on federal policies, not state. I think people will make a judgment over the next 6 weeks about how they want to vote, and I don't believe that the current polling will be a reflection of what happens on polling day.
Thank you, Daniel. I'll throw one in there, connectivity. So can you please give us your thoughts on connectivity on your peninsula, and what you would do differently if you're elected to fix some of the mobile black spots in this election?
Yes, I've experienced some of the problems when I first lived in Wallaroo, and it hasn't got any better. Obviously, there's a great need to improve connectivity. It affects a lot of people in different ways. It's not just personal messaging, there's calls to businesses, operation of websites, a whole range of things that are affected by this. Certainly it needs improvement. In my experience, Vodafone hadn't been too bad. I had a very bad experience with Optus, and I don't know if they've improved their game here. Since I left Wallaroo, came back again, the NBN has been installed, so that's been a great help for a lot of people. There's a lot of people who love the NBN. I think there's a lot of good still doing that.
Yeah, just in regards to that, obviously, we need to hold the current government to account and making sure we listen to the people of York Peninsula. Yeah, so that's a big thing. I think just holding the government to account is massive. So,
connectivity is a massive issue for us, as we all know. We've been in a black spot the last 2 days. My mobile phone has been on emergency calls only. I haven't given up my landline because I can't rely on my mobile. It's particularly dangerous for primary producers out in the paddock. If there's a fire, we can't communicate with one another. A lot of us still have CB radios. We're going to have to continue to use those because we simply cannot rely on mobile phones. I believe this would be an issue that is a federal issue as well that we need to work in with, and I know Ron Ramsey and now Tom Benning as the member of Grey, this is something they've been advocating for quite a lot. So what I tend to find is when a new tower goes up and there's a booster somewhere, it actually depletes the service somewhere else. So there's efforts to improve service, but somehow it depletes services elsewhere. So I'm not a technical expert when it comes to telecommunications, so I haven't got an answer as to how we're going to deliver a better service, but we need to talk to the experts who and telecommunications companies to work out a better solution, because it's a particularly dangerous situation for us currently.
Yeah, I agree with everyone. That's a massive issue. I think one of the really interesting aspects of it has been when Telstra proposed turning off 3G coverage, the regional community sounded a lot to be alarmed about how that might have an adverse impact on them. The telco would then turn around and assure us that nothing would be worse off, and we'd be in the same place we were. I think beyond argument, that hasn't happened. We are now worse than we were back then. Either misled us, or they didn't know what they were doing, which is incredibly disappointing. It's obviously impractical to build a tower in every corner. There needs to be investigation into the new technologies that are on the market. I know Telstra will point farmers in the direction of Starlink and ask them to pay extra money to have that on their roofs and on their tractors. Maybe it's time for that to become a subsidised program in this regional community so that we can access that improved technology.
Thank you all. Thank you all. We'll throw back to the audience. Is there another question?
James back again. Politics in Australia is probably at its lowest ever I've ever seen. There seems to be a constant fight between woke and woke, conservative, progressive. You have the Islam Jewish situation, you have climate change. Why do you candidates think it's got so bad? And how can we, as a bit of a city country thing, how can we reach out to the city people, to the politicians in the city, to get a view for us?
Here's another good question. The problem that I see with political landscape generally, Labor's been virtue for that. The Liberal Party is a mixture of conservatives and left-wing, and that's something they've been grappling with for quite a while. And this is the reason that we see so why a conservative party is such a fan of one nation theory. I forgot the original question, sorry.
How do we reach out to city people? Well, how do we break down that divide between this constant war of pushing further apart between woke and anti, progressive and conservative? It seems to be widening. If you look over in America, we look over in Trump, Nigel Farage, it's just getting worse. So we're becoming more fractured. How do we break down that divide?
Most of the woke policies are based on fantasy, to be honest, whereas the conservative side is focusing on the truth. And we've got to keep pushing truth. The aim of the Labour Party is obviously to get seats, to at least have a balance of power or an influence on the major parties. If the major parties don't have a majority in their own right, then they've got to cooperate with other parties to get their legislation through, and they've got to do something to get something. That's basically how we fight.
Yeah, it's very straightforward. So these days, parents are gentle parenting. I don't agree with that. I think that they now give their children puberty blockers. I'm pretty sure that's what they're called. I think it's wrong, and I think that we can't even talk about Jesus Christ anymore. We've lost our way massively. So as you know, One Nation stands for being straightforward, straight on the point, and has common sense. Even Liberal now aren't the Conservative Party anymore. That's why Corey, he's come over to the One Nation Party, because I would say we're awake, okay? Woke kids shouldn't be even a thing, to be honest. And out in the farm, country life, that's why a lot of people are moving out here now, because they're sick of what is being taught in the cities. So that's what we stand for with One Nation. We've had enough, and I say vote One Nation because we're going to speak up and we're going to make people wake up and say, hey, look, you can't be teaching in our schools these ideologies, it's wrong, and children under 18 shouldn't be having medication. They don't even know what they're doing under 18. So I think that's a big one, and we need to speak up and just address it for what it is. Bring God-like ways back into schools and stop teaching Islam, because when did that even become a thing in Australia? So, we're in Australia, we need to educate the younger generation and teach that. Thank you.
I think what we need to do is get back to basics, and that's what the Liberal Party want to do under our new leader, Ashton Hearn. Ashton, as you know, is from a regional background. Her family, a farming family, where the Liberal Party is focusing on affordability. Housing is a problem in the regions. It's also a problem in Adelaide. Electricity prices are a problem in the regions. They're a problem in Adelaide. It's a problem for small business. Healthcare is an issue that we know it's an issue here in the regions. The declining healthcare services. Of course, we know the problems in the city. We hear about it all the time with the ridiculous ramping hours that we're experiencing. Crime is an issue in the regions. I'm hearing more and more from people in the public post about problems up there, and of course we know that crime is a problem in the city. So those are the three key areas that the Liberal Party want to focus on, and I think that's the way to bring people together is all of these things, affordability, healthcare and crime, are all matters that stretch across the regions and the city. That brings us all together. We've all got common goals to get better outcomes for those situations. So the Liberal Party, we know, looks after the regions, but the policies are going to look after our state, and that's why we need to support the Liberal candidates in this next election.
James, I reckon the quickest way to make society more cohesive is just everyone really playful to get off those platforms and everyone stop arguing amongst each other and everything. But sort of that, I would say, as far as I know, at least the campaign we've run this week has been nice and friendly. The personal attacks so far certainly wasn't last time either, so all we can do is look after our own backyard and make sure we do it the right way, and the rest will take care of itself. As I might just touch on the other part of the question, was how do we get voters to Metropolitan Adelaide? Often reminisce about the damage Steel Hall did when you removed the playmaker. We still have that, and we have more seats, more sway in Parliament. So maybe just double the number of regional seats. We have a majority, and maybe be able to get some stuff done. But sure, that's a good double.
Thank you. That was quite a political question, that one. So let's go back into an issue-based question. On the York Peninsula here, so many grain producers and locals here are the CFS volunteers, as you know. What support do you think is needed to continue giving the volunteers the opportunity to put up their hand without them being financially or personally disadvantaged for stepping up?
I have to confess I'm not highly familiar with the state of the CFS. I've driven past the Medina place several times when it's open. They seem to be reasonably well resourced. How all that resource matters to me, I'm not sure. I'm certainly wanting to look into that, find out exactly what we do need, and push for any extra resources that may be needed. And well, that's just one place I'm talking about. And of course, there are places across the peninsula. It's a huge area subject to fires frequently and other issues, other accidents, so on. They do need to be well resourced to deal with those things.
So in regards to CFS, so we do need more funding, as I stated. Also, another thing, One Nation wants to increase dam sizes, so instead of being 2 megalitres, it will be 4. So that's a big one. So that will help out, obviously, with water supply. Yes, that's another one. Thank you.
As you might have read recently, the Liberal Party have committed to triple the current funding for farm firefighting units, and as we all know, it's very often the first responders to a fire are farmers. So that's a great support to the CFS to have those farm fire units on the ground. In terms of, if you look over the border in Victoria, the amount of overreach that has happened there has resulted in more regulation and higher taxes, particularly in relation to the country fire service. So we know that the Labor government, left unchecked, would certainly increase those sorts of levies here in South Australia. So the Liberal Party certainly has a different view about supporting our regions and our emergency services, and I think that we've got a proven track record in that space.
I think the one thing about the CFS, and what time is a new and original idea that I've come up with, the one thing in years of using years and all that, you know, those produce volunteer CFS. It's not, again, not my original idea, but it just makes sense to me, and it does make sense. You might be charged, you can sell that, you want volunteers out there for that price. I know there are problems, it's not an easy thing to apply land-based tax against an individual, or to apply additional land-based tax against an individual, but there's a will, there's a way. We want to encourage people into volunteering, not just the CFS, but in handle some other emergency services. If you have one way you can impact them, making a bit more information to people.
Thank you. Have we got another question from the audience?
My name's Dana. Just a question, we mentioned about college. There's some culture where their standard of pride is different from what we say is wrong as their pride in their culture. For example, teaching from the Quran that be different to our Judeo-Christian culture. So, how would you address that?
Thanks for your question, Mayor. I guess regardless of a person's religious persuasion or where they come from, our laws apply to those individuals if they commit crimes. And one of the commitments that the Liberal Party has made is to, if people break bail, they will go to jail. So they're trying to stop repeat offenders. Currently, there's a 4 strikes and out policy with the Labor government, which isn't working. But we also want to introduce an early intervention program with a fund that will break the cycle of crime. We want to also get more police in the system, and we know that there is a lack of police resourcing in the regions, and I believe it's Storytown won't have a policeman at the moment, so they've been advertising for a vacancy but haven't been able to fill that one. So it's very important that we offer retention and relocation support for police, and we've also, the party have committed to support the health or education payments for recruits. We've also committed to extra funding for local businesses and councils to install security infrastructure like cameras, for example, to help monitor and deter crime in our local area.
We'll throw that question open to the other 3 hands as well. So on the topic of crime, how would you help curb crime on the York Peninsula? John, will start with you.
Yeah, 2 immediate thoughts come to mind. Firstly, to ensure appropriate sentencing for crime. The police need to be resourced well enough to be able to attend situations that occur. But also, I think it's a matter of education. Private schools seem to be pretty good at teaching discipline. I think there's less of it in the public schools. And often there's a disparity between the way parents discipline and the way schools teach discipline, if they do so. There needs to be greater cooperation, some sort of structure between parents and schools, so that discipline is taught and there's less tendency to crime in the first place.
As in regards to crime, so I lived in Townsville, seeing the crime firsthand, it's really bad out there. You've got people running down the street, breaking into houses, breaking into cars, and as for police tenure, I disagree. You can have all the cops in the world there, but if the laws ain't tough, nothing's going to be done. So the laws need to be tougher, and police need to be able to do harsher punishments. Do you know what I mean? So you can't just go out there and lock them up for one night and set them free again because they're going into houses the next night. So the laws need to be tougher on these criminals, and people breaking into houses, cars. That's a big one. And in regards to the Quran and what they teach the Quran, it's really bad stuff. You educate yourself, you know it is. So that's, I don't agree. If you come into Australia, you should be assimilating. You shouldn't be bringing, the Quran, Sharia law into Australia. That stuff's really bad. So if you're not going to assimilate, we don't want you here.
I'd actually like to pick up on the Snowtown. So Snowtown Breakaway had an ad hoc for 12 months, 18 months. And I actually got the Police Association about this week. The trouble we're having in regional South Australia is that the benefits of metropolitan policing catch on for regional police. So if you are a single or third level person station, Snowtown Breakaway, you get 35% voting on your players and see if you get out there. The metropolitan LA is now called up to 23% voting and energy. So people do stay in LA because it's almost as financial liberty, plus going to work is hard, so there's not tending to come out. So the Police Association might see that lifted to 45% voting to try and encourage people to come out and make up that difference. That's something we do. Break up and say that it's been well over a year. Those people haven't really get really stressed out about that.
Thank you. We have another question.
I guess it's not really relevant to
Sorry, that's not your name.
Oh, yes, sorry, that's embarrassing. It's not really relevant directly to grain producing, even though I'm a grain producer. But I just sort of wonder if you've got just a general thought on personal freedoms and freedom to do business, etc., and the freedom and the rights to farm. Just because in the last 6 years or so, we've seen some incredible erosion of that in our state. Not so much practically, but definitely legislatively. So I wonder if there's anything that can be changed there, or whether it's just because local government's brought that.
Well, you got a couple of examples of that. So you're talking taxes, you're talking.
No, like the emergency powers legislation and all that sort of thing. Somebody, government can nominate someone to declare a make state as an emergency, and they can actually leave. The legislature says they can actually force to bring any amount of laws that might have previously been in place because of the direction of authorised policy.
So political overreach, I think, is the topic.
Yeah, that'll be it.
I'd like to hear your thoughts, each can, on political overreach, and do you think that is a problem at the moment?
Yeah, often those kind of laws are formulated with well intention, but not always well carried out. Certainly that's an issue, and federal things have a policy on that to move to roll back restrictions on personal freedom.
In regards to that, with the freedom, I believe farmers should have freedom to do what they want with their land. We have the current government now putting windmills on farmers' land, and sometimes they don't even get a say. So I think that farmers own the land. We need to stop foreign ownership of land as well. So that's a big one with One Nation. So that's exactly what I was agreeing with what you're saying. We need to fight for farmers and their freedom of their land. They own it, not the foreign investors.
Yes, thanks for your question. It's actually looking over to Victoria again, where we see the Labor government has shown extreme overreach and allowed electricity companies to force their way on properties without the farmers' permission, and ultimately individuals and businesses are fined or can be fined if they restrict these people coming onto their property. And the fact is that the Labor government have gone unchecked in Victoria because there's too many independents and minority opposition, materials, who aren't strong enough to hold that Labor government to account. We don't want that to happen here in South Australia. As I mentioned earlier, the Liberal Party have been very strong in standing up to fair access arrangements for mining. We will continue to do that. And that will extend to other people that were in solar farms or wind farms, those similar issues. The Liberal Party will certainly stand by mining producers to make sure there's fair regulations there.
Well, if you disagree about the general personal freedom, I'm sure it's a people part of the country life. We're going to touch on the right to farm, because you mentioned briefly. I know you provided that it wasn't necessarily a farm-based question, but there is absolutely place for that. Just think we want to be careful. The way the bureaucracy works, as soon as we bring in the right to farm, rather than bring it into the license to farm, you have to pay for it and conditions attached to it. So that's my personal view. I'm wrong. Asking for the right to farm does come with that risk of the license. We're operating under those conditions for the rest of it.
Thank you. Answer the question.
That's great. Just to ask a specific range question to all of you. 2024 was a statewide drought across the state, including here on Waihee, which is great. 2025, I think, is a pre-drought year on Waihee, so I think there's quite a recovery. However, commodity prices have dropped dramatically. We're now seeing lentils are 5 in front of them, and inputs continue to rise dramatically. In our GPSA surveys, cost of inputs is always ranked as the #1 issue that people want us to advocate for. So my question is, what do you think is the role of state governments in working together with farmers to encourage and give them the confidence to continue to innovate and to be productive going forward?
So I think there's a couple of points in there. So supporting innovation, what's your thoughts on supporting innovation, and also the cost of doing business?
First up, the government, of course, has no control over the weather, and that's a great problem. I know where I live is pretty much right on the borderline. The issue, of course, is the weather varies greatly from time to time. Certainly, the drought was pretty bad a couple of years ago, and even down further towards Adelaide, it was a bad effect there. And then I think one of the points you mentioned was that there's suddenly a glut of grain and the price has dropped. Maybe some sort of price stabilisation scheme may work. It used to be used for before. I don't know how it worked, so I can't speak with any authority on that. But that's one possibility. The government certainly does need to work with the farmers to help develop ways of improving agricultural practice and making ways to prepare for and work through droughts. And that's something again that we need to go on. It may be a possibility.
I'm not a farmer, I'm going to act like one. I'm going to work closely with the farmers and find out what they need. We have Barney Joyce now as well, so he'll be coming down shortly in a week, I think, 2 weeks. He's going to come down and he's going to talk to farmers, find out what you do need. You know, and in the drought, if you need more water in the dams or whatever it is you need, obviously we will supply that as One Nation. Yeah, thank you. Well, of course, I know all about the seasons because I live in Narungga.
in 2024, it was a tough year. We were very lucky here on the pitch, where we only had 6 inches of rain, so I was still talking inches, and we managed to get a crop. That was not the case for many other areas around the state who didn't get the header out of the shed, and for some areas up in the northern areas, Jamestown, Boomerang, up that way, it's been at least 2 years, coming up to 3. Very tough for those conditions. We also farm down the southeast. I know the stress of feeding animals for 12 months and the cost of buying hay and the stress of not being able to find hay, then finding some hay that is extraordinarily overpriced. So the stress of drought conditions really weighing on our farmers. We've been very lucky this last season, as John mentioned, it's been a much better season for the Peninsula, not sorry for Mallee and up in north again, and we've seen commodity prices have dropped, so we're fortunate here. Our yields do help us balancing that, but it's always hard to get all that ducks in a row. I guess the Liberal Party, and in particular our Shadow Minister for Agriculture, Nicholas Party, who's here this evening, was an extremely strong advocate to support our farmers in the midst of that drought. So for 18 months, Nicola and the Liberal team were stressing to the Labor government that farmers needed support, and they needed support through low or no interest loans. The funding packages that came out from the government were inadequate. They started out with a small package. I think it was around 30 million. I don't want to quote numbers that aren't correct, but then they increased to a second package after more pressure was placed on them by the opposition. Probably a lot of that funding was a matching dollar for dollar arrangement, so you needed to spend $40,000 to get $20,000 back. So it was a maximum of $20,000. But of course, finding another $20,000 isn't that easy when you've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars feeding livestock, or you haven't got into livestock, you haven't got an income from your grain crop. So the government have last night, the night before, actually announced a loan offer for drought-affected areas. It wasn't all areas across the state, just selected areas. It would be areas that people are most need. But at the end of the day, it's getting pretty close to getting ready for seeding time. Everyone needs to purchase inputs, like fertiliser ahead of time. So we hope that this announcement from the government will not be too late for people to apply. We don't know what the eligibility criteria will be, but it's certainly something that the Liberal Party have been focusing on. So just in terms of providing support for farmers, the Liberal Party have certainly been advocating in that space for a long time.
Thank you. I'd like to question about innovation and how government can help. It's my strong view in the overarching thing of my ideology is that innovation happens in private enterprise and government gets out of the way. So as we're more furiously agree right now, the creating of business and person should be maintained, so they can invest in research into new ways of doing things. The role of government, in my view, is to make sure they have access to the inputs at the cheapest possible price they can. As a good example, perhaps maybe the government, the parliament, large league should be advocating to the APB and make sure that the chemicals are being used. To not be able to harvest them, control mice and those sorts of things. Could be sourced at the cheapest price, most effective way to use it. So that's the role of government, in my view, to make sure the inputs are cheapest or most efficient, and get out of the way to private enterprise and company innovation.
Is there another question in the audience? If not, I'll throw one in. We've seen obviously that the price of land has risen. What would you do to support young farmers to either remain on the land if they're taking over from say, their parents, or to buy property and get into farming? What would you do to support farmers?
Good question. if the young farmers are inheriting the situation, that's not so bad. It's a matter of what costs are involved in operating the farm. For farmers who want to buy into the situation, I'm not quite sure what we can do to help them. Maybe some sort of closed system would be the things help invest in the farms.
That was supporting young farmers to either remain on the land or walk into the farm.
Okay, well,
Supporting young farmers, I think it's a big one. We really need to offer, I don't know, money in regards to helping fund farms. They keep running, even if that's like small grants or something like that. This is more Barnaby Joyce's question, so feel free to come down when I post that and ask him that question. We'll be able to answer that really well. Thank you.
Thanks. I think it's about keeping the next generation on the land, and doing that is also about education. So the Liberal Party are looking at ways to support apprenticeships and education in trades, and also support the agricultural industry. So we need young people who are able to have that background that can then continue within the industry, and also have an opportunity if they need to work on farm. They have a year that isn't so good, they've got an opportunity to balance their years with the farm. And I guess if we also look at if we don't just look at farming, grain farming, and we look at fishing, primary production, we've seen that the stress on our oceans with the algal bloom situation creates a lot of, not a lot, but there are some fishers who would like to exit the industry. There hasn't been a clear opportunity for them to do that. But the Liberal Party will be offering, looking at a 20-month $1 million package to support people exiting the industry. So then those that remain in the industry have a viable business, and then that will allow our fish stocks to recover, and then potentially have the option then to buy back in, and that would be an option that the Liberal Party would offer the income that we sold out of the business, would then have first option to buy back. So I don't know whether something like that's not going to work for one industry, of course, but I just think in terms of the situation I mentioned earlier about the Liberal Party advocating for those low interest loans, in times of need, the farmers don't want a handout, they might want a hand up. And that is an important thing to support our farming community when seasons are tough, so that we can make sure that they have a strong, viable business for generations to come.
Excellent question, right? I'm going to read that in let you know better, but it's simplest. Price is obviously demand supply. But the simplest is price determined by demand supply. So the more we can do to preserve supply, protect it from urban sprawl, protect it from mining, protect it from solar farms, more supply will be a higher price of it, more the price of oxygen. That's probably the best answer I can give.
And just off the back of that question, so again, this is more of a community question. We fully different conditional region. Housing affordability, so it's obviously an issue right across South Australia, but in relation, what would you do to help with housing affordability in this way?
Yeah, the first issue there is provision of land for building houses on. There is a short supply of land, and again, it comes down to a clash between those sort of requirements and taking up arable land. I'm aware of a huge subdivision happening at Wallaroo, and I think that land was previously arable land. then it was a matter of getting the houses on. When I moved up here, I was initially going to buy a block of land and build a house until I was told it would take me about 2 years to get it done. Part of the problem was the blockage in approvals from the council and various other legalities. So that needs to be smoothed out. We need to look at providing a good supply of land that can be built on without impacting farmers. I think the marina, not necessarily a good example. They dug out salt pans and flattened the land for houses to be built on. Trouble is, there were some major financial difficulties getting that done, so that's not necessarily a good idea. And having lived in the back end of the marina, the soil there was shocking, it's all salty. So, finding a supply of land first, easing the blockage of approvals to get things done, and actually getting houses built. My experience is that it takes at least 3 months to get a trainee to do something for you, because they're also not busy.
Yes, as I've stated many times before, mass immigration needs to be stopped. You know, the government have let in 1.4 million immigrants into our country, so this is also making the younger generation very hard to get out of our home these days. So we need to stop mass immigration, that's what One Nation believes in. And then also, yeah, so that's a big one, mass immigration. Thank you.
Just in terms of agricultural land, Labor rushed through legislation ahead of the scheduled 2027 environmental and food production area bill, and the Liberal Party put forward some sensible amendments around ensuring that there will be 11 independent mapping and auditing of primary production land to identify what land is productive and to protect what land is less or not productive to be sensibly released for housing. And then that data will be made public for full transparency. So opening up more areas of non-productive land for housing, perhaps north of River Lee, west of Port Lakey Road, would be an option there. Labor voted against those amendments. We can all appreciate that our towns and communities are areas that should be can be identified for growing Aboriginal populations, as well as obviously investing in infrastructure and services to support those populations. But it's about identifying the appropriate things to do so, and that's why we auditing is particularly important. Just in terms of general policies, their Liberal Party have committed to abolish stamp duty on established homes for first home buyers up to $1 million. So the Labor Party's policy is for a new home. Not everyone wants to build a new home, and the new homes may be in a location that you would prefer. So there's a responsibility there for young people and families in particular. In terms of also making homes more affordable, part of the education commitment, as I reflected on earlier, is to train more tradies and remove taxes on apprentices. So that also is supporting our regions too, because we need young skilled people who can also, that those skills also can dovetail into the agricultural industry. The Liberal Party want to invest in 21st century construction techniques to build homes faster as well.
So there's room for literally hundreds, maybe thousands of homes into Canada, and a couple of towns. The problem we've got with SA Water, not provide the water to make money. They won't sign up on those projects, those developments, which are now zone residential. They say there's not enough capacity in the system. Those houses to go ahead. So we're at a stalemate where we've got developers ready to subdivide and make lots available to people wanting to build there. But because SA Water much water they can't go in. That's a situation that needs to be rectified immediately. There's massive expenditure of river leak, which is helping them, but doesn't seem to be flowing on into us. So the 2% or the most impactful thing that we could do would be improve the water supply to our region. And those developers would be able to take off and be more able to do straight away.
Thank you. We'll throw to a final audience question.
Right. Just a general question. Assuming that you're working with the Labor government, what do you think is your best opportunity to show strong leadership if you're elected and to get good outcomes across a range of issues, not just single topics?
Speaking practically, unlikely to see a lower house seat, but we want to get upper house seats and hopefully gain leverage through balance of power. Also, down the other way, which the Labor understands.
I don't know what to say other than we've got Pauline Hanson, she's the best in the game. You know, 30 years plus she's been doing this, so she's got my backing, she's got pretty much all the Australia's backing now, and she's in the polls, and that's what we say about
I think it comes back to a point I mentioned earlier, which is we just need to get back to basics. And I think the Labor government can't disagree that when everyone opens their electricity bill, they just get a real shock, and we're seeing more small businesses close down because they can't afford the electricity bill. I think that to work with the Labor government, those things they can't ignore. They can't ignore that businesses are closing. They can't ignore that families are hurting with the price of electricity bills and then also household costs. They can't argue with the ranking figures. They can't argue that our healthcare system is failing a lot of people. So I think we need to be very clear about what we need to fix in that space. They can't argue the rates of crime escalating, so we need to be able to work on a platform to address that. That they can't argue with the fact that they have wasted an incredible amount of money. They have wasted $600 million chasing the hydrogen dream that didn't come to fruition. They've wasted $200 million on their own advertising. They plan to waste another $40 million building a golf course in North Adelaide that no one wants. Yet we have 3 world-class golf courses in Adelaide, Royal Adelaide, Narungga and Grange. We don't need another one. So there's so much waste, and they need to acknowledge that they have wasted so much money, and there is so many better ways that money can be spent. And it's very clear that the people of South Australia feeling a pinch when it comes to everyday costs. Businesses are feeling a pinch, farmers, their businesses. So our communities want better health care. There are things they can't argue with, and we need to take action.
Well, that's a tightrope I've been trying to walk for the last 4 years. Understanding what we need to, and then working with the most immediate person. I'd like to speak to you as well, as that's what I've done successfully. Hopefully that'll be all of them. I think I've still got quite loudly on local land over a number of years. And although we haven't necessarily won the fight yet, we won the war, I should say, we certainly had a fight. We still haven't had the healthcare, we'll call that petition with 11,000 signatures, which really demonstrated community access on that topic. But aside from those, there might have also had some successes. Point to see rescue is finally getting a new vote after many, many years of trying. That's something that's been done by working with the government in the background to try and lobby for their betterment. The new CFS ship that's being built right out here behind us, which will co-host the SES facility. It's a new ambulance station in Mullery. I've already put forward what I believe is a pretty impressive array of new roads that we've built. So I'd like to think that I've stood up when we needed it to, but when I needed to, we also had some success in working with the government to get what we needed to.
Thank you all. We're going to go to one final question, and then I'll give you a 3 or 4 minute pitch each to finish off. Last question is, what's the single biggest issue you're hearing about during your campaigning here in Narungga, and how you plan to address that single biggest
a lot of snapper out there. I went to the algae bloom talk, and a lot of people said, no, there's no fish, and I've spoken to a lot of the locals, and they said there's a lot of fish in the water. So obviously we don't want to open it up to everywhere. We understand that it's the algae bloom that is affecting fish, but that's fish that are inshore, right? So snapper, there's people that are catching snapper and they suffer barotrauma because they're catching so many now and they're dying anyways. So we want to open up the snapper fishing to zones. So that's a big one to me. Thank you.
Certainly the biggest issue is healthcare. Our hospitals are inadequate to service our growing population. We're going to see an increase in population, in particular in the Cobble Coast over the next 10 years. Our Wallaby Hospital has only 21 beds. That's not going to be sufficient. Our accident and emergency services in Maitland and Yorktown aren't sufficient as well. Our staff are under extreme pressure. It's not unusual for the Maitland Hospital to have 3 retrievals a day. So that's the MedStar helicopter or RFDS, simply because they haven't got the level of staff to be able to do multiple emergencies at one time. And so it's very important that we address Aboriginal healthcare, because at the end of the day, that's also been putting more pressure on the city hospitals, because instead of being able to manage fairly basic healthcare in regions where they're transporting people to Adelaide, particularly if they might need a CT scan to assess the situation. So if they require a CT scan any time outside of Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, so if they're on a football field and get a head knock, it's a helicopter or a plane ride to Adelaide. So that's a really key issue for our region.
I agree with Chantal and Tanya. I think they're both tremendously important issues and coming up a lot, but we use the variety of for another one. The power outages that affect the Southern Hill Peninsula is coming up frequently, I'm sure with all of us, and something that needs to be solved ASAP. I think what we keep doing with the equipment is forcing them to provide compensation where they do fail to provide power to us. I think we're having that money to those who are affected by the outages is big enough to make them interact together. So that's what I'd like to see straight away, in addition to what we've done.
I think the major issue I see is the cost of living. People are struggling, and element to that is the cost of reliable energy. It's affecting households greatly. And because the cost of energy also affects industries that use a lot of energy, jobs, people with large fridges. We had a story last week of a cafe that had to throw out a heap of food because the freezers were off. That's the major issue with us.
All right, let's go into final pitch for your vote. We'll start down the opposite this time. Let's go with Grace a good start and roll down this way.
This is my first vote, so I'm seeing re-election, hopefully I'm going to be working on over the past 8 years. I'm hoping to put forward my achievements that I think that I've managed to secure for our region. I'll submit to you that would be, that's my pitch for re-election. So I'm very proud to represent this region. It's been a tremendous honour. Difficult times, sure, but rewarding when we manage to get that kind of deserve. So hopefully my record's enough. I'm confident that if I get re-elected, we can continue that work and continue getting good outcomes. We'll see how the rest of the campaign goes.
Thank you. Yes, I think it's important to recognise that, as I mentioned earlier, from 2018 to 2022, we had a Liberal government in power and Liberal representative. So a lot of the action and a lot of the important projects that have been delivered for this region over the last 8 years have been committed and funded by a Liberal government. So at the end of the day, it's the Liberal Party that backed this region and other regions throughout South Australia. As I mentioned earlier, our key issues are about affordability. We know businesses are struggling, we know families are struggling, we know our healthcare system is struggling, and we also know that our crime rates are going up. So the Liberal Party is committed to all of those things, getting back to basics, and we know that the Liberal Party has a strong track record when it comes to backing our farmers and supporting them.
I think it goes to show how much fight I have in me by door knocking, getting out there talking to people. I'm not just putting a script in the letterbox. I'm actually going up to people and talking them to their face. So I will be the voice for the community, for the York Peninsula and One Nation and what we stand by, and that is bringing common sense back. It's one flag, one people, one nation. Thank you.
Family first is for you. You've all come from families, and the welfare of your families is important to every one of you. If I'm elected, I'll promise to stand up for you in every aspect of your lives, in your home life, your working life, whatever industry you're involved in. I'll promote you to the government, and I will hold you to account.
Thank you, and that concludes the floor. I want to thank everyone for coming out. Really appreciate you taking the time. I hope you've taken something out of tomorrow. I definitely want to thank the candidates. Obviously, we've got a lot of issues happening. So I've got a little gift to go the GPSA out for each of you. So make sure you have that around the place. And once again, thank you all for coming on tomorrow.